So, Calvyn,
Yes.
thank you very much for
No,
making time. And I've been following your leadership journey for quite a while. So, can we start at the beginning? And can you tell us where you're from, where you were born, and maybe where did you go to school? Where did your journey start?
My journey started in Paarl, the dusty streets of Paarl East, which was then the colored township in the bigger town of Paarl. I was born in 1962, the 21st of June, in a one-bedroom house in Paarl. The street's name is incidentally named after my family, so it's also Gilfellan Street. So I was born in 19 Gilfellan Street and grew up in 19 Gilfellan Street. After 4.5 years of relatively freedom, I was enrolled at the local school because they just opened a local school at the end of the road of our street. And because there was not enough students, they even accepted, learners from as young as my age, 4.5 years old. So yes, so I completed my school here at it's called Amstelhof Primary in 1974, and then from there on I went to high school. Also not far from where I live, Paulus Joubert Senior Secondary School, from standard 6, we call it standards then, but it's grade 8 to grade 12 then at Paulus Joubert. Then after that I took a break. I matriculated in 1979, but I took a break working with my father, who is a builder. My mother is a housewife, or whatever, yes. Stay at home mom. My father was a builder, a bricklayer, and because in our culture there was no word such as gap year. You are either idle because you don't have money, or you work with somebody. So I worked with my father in the building industry, and I think a lot of my later work, thinking, worldview has been informed by the metaphor of a building, that you have to lay the foundation, you have to build the walls up, then you have to wait a while, you must have patience because you can't just finish all the walls, otherwise it will be too weak for the roof to be taken. And that patience and that structure, I think I got in that year that I worked with my father.
So is it fair to say that your father was your role model, or one of your role models?
A very big role model, because I think what I learned from him is that you can talk and talk, but at the end of the day, if you can't leave something, a legacy, physical legacy, a book or a building or a monument or something, then people can't really see your works. He said you can't talk work, you must work, you must deliver. And I think that's also something that I took from him, that you even if that legacy you leave is not for you to enjoy, but for other people, you must leave something. So I often, when often not now, but often when I was despondent, I would drive or walk some of the houses or buildings that I know he was working on. Like, for instance, when I speak about the Nederburg wine farm, and then I think of him because he was doing the paving and some of the interior things there. It's something physical that he has left, and I think that's very important to me because it gives you structure. Because I think many leaders talk and they make good speeches, but they can't they can't type up something or they can't do something, and I think that's very important to me. Yeah.
So what other sources of influence informed your thinking of leadership at that age, at that early age?
There's a couple of events that happened in my life that I think informed me. The late 60s, 69, 70, the anti-apartheid struggle of that, and the fact that as young boys in a rugby mad world, we were taught not to, or we were, not to support the Springboks, our own team. We supported the All Blacks. So I still remember that whole All Black team of 1970. I can't even remember my Springbok team of now, but I can. So that impression was there. Then also during that time, the fact that Dr. Christian Barnard could take a heart out of a pig and transplant it into a human being was also very, very much in my mind. And then the fact that people went to the moon also during that time.
Okay.
And then there was a fourth one, earthquake. It's the first time they experienced an earthquake. All in that 68, 69, 70, in that period. Remember, I was born in 62, so I was the 7 years was your formation years. So it was at the end of that formation year that those events impacted on me and the possibilities. It's almost a defining moment of moving out of very primitive fire and candle into the possibility of a heart transplant and from people going to the moon. Very, very critical era. Yeah.
So at that stage, what was your dream? You must have had a dream.
Yes.
What was your dream career?
At that stage, I was very much into nature and stuff. So I always knew I wanted to be a vet, working with animals and nurturing animals and creating a better world for them, because obviously at that time there was a lot of animal cruelty. They would slaughter in front of us. We would go out and hunt animals. So I always had that soft spot for animals, and I was very adamant that that's the direction that I wanted to go in.
So where did you start your career?
Yeah, my working. Let me let me take a step further. So then, 1976 came. 1976 was the other. I explained to you 68, 69, 70 was the moment as a child, and then as a young adult. 76 was obviously very traumatic. Television was just brought in South Africa, and the Soweto riots and the open protest of youngsters, the uprising, and also that eventually spread into Paarl in our community in September, when the whole community was up in arms. I witnessed how the police station was stormed by people, delivery bread vans. Turned around with their hands by people. So that is also, I think, shaping. And I could there make the distinction between the moral imperative for people to stand up against the unjust system. That was the moment. Not in the 60s. In the 76 was that defining moment where I realized that although the older people say, no, these children are out of order, they don't know what they're doing, they mess with education. I could at that stage, I was 13 years old, 14 years old, I could distinguish that this was a just, I was afraid, a just cause, but I was very afraid because you witness this, you see the van driving, and then from nowhere you hear how the bricks fall on that wall, but you don't even see the people. So it's very traumatic. You're 13 years old, you don't really know, but you realize that it's right. You realize what the older aunts say about, no, you must forgive and forget, is not right, because you're also at school and you are influenced in high school. Grade 9 I was already then. You realize you can make up your mind. At that stage you can make up your mind. So that's also very, very much influenced me, and I can remember some of the student leaders who were locked up, and I still have relationship with them today that influenced my career. Now you're asking my career. In that time, my career also started. I started to casual because my father's a bricklayer, my mother is a stay-away home. We are at that stage 7 children, so I had to go out and do weekend works just to get some income, for us.
Now, am I right in saying that the Soweto, the events around the Soweto uprisings probably opened your eyes to playing a more public role, maybe a role in public service, leadership?
Yeah.
Later on in your life, is that when you started to look at public service leadership?
Not yet. At that stage, I was still adamant that I want to become a vet. I will bring you to the story now. So then comes 79, I matriculated, and I was starting to apply to universities. I was very naive because at township schools of those days, you didn't get proper counseling of what the careers are, whether your whether I realized I like biology, I like geography, I like this, but I was not good in maths. But nobody told you, you have to be good at maths when you want to do these things. I nevertheless applied to universities. In Stellenbosch University, there was a course, not totally vet, but it was in that direction. But the only vet where you can study as a vet was in Pretoria, Onderstepoort. And I never realized that. It's only when I started to apply. And that was partially why I had to take that so-called gap year, because there wasn't that support that I know what I wanted to do. Then Stellenbosch wrote back to me and say, you can't simply apply. You have to have ministerial exemption, because you are a colored student. You can't just go to Stellenbosch normally. You have to write to the minister to ask if you can go there. And that triggered me to say, that's probably where I said, first of all, I don't have the subjects to go into my dream career, but secondly, it shows even more the injustice. That's perhaps the moment where I think I want to be more in a public, political, like this kind of service career. I think that triggered the moment that I realized that the system of education will not allow me to become what I want to become. So I took that year with my father in the building industry, and with all the metaphors, and that kind of directed me.
Would you say that was a turning point in your life?
Yeah. I think it was definitely a turning point. That letter that I got from Stellenbosch was a turning point in my life. I said, there are many, many battlefields. The Soweto uprising was just one level, but there are other levels that you have to try to consciously offer yourself as an agent for change in one way or another. It was very clear. 76, the seed was planted, but I was still young, scared, unsure, But I think 79 was that kind of direction. So in that year, then I started to apply, or in 1980, I started to apply to universities, and I was accepted at the University of Western Cape, where I started my study career now. First the bachelor's degree in where I specialized in geography, then the honors degree, and then I started the master's. And of course, that was very turbulent years. From 80 to, I would say, 1980 up till 1989 was probably the most turbulent years in the life of the university, maybe in the Western Cape, or maybe in South Africa. That's when the youth really redirected the whole direction that the country went into, up till the 1990s, when Madiba was in fact released in our town, in my town, and I was part of that. But between that 80, 81, and that a lot of things happened to me that kind of strengthened my resolve why I should go in the direction that I should go. So it's not only me as a conscious agent of change that went there, also the circumstances, the demands of society at that stage, and what I wanted perfectly met at UWC. So when I accepted the position of junior lecturer in 1985, while I was still studying, I knew that I was here on a path that I think will be second choice, but it will be very meaningful for me. I realized that. And my mother said I'm psychic, but I really could realize it, because you could see how these things were building up from where I started with the dusty streets till the happenings of the late 60s, the 1976, the 80s, my career, and where it's going, where it went to.
So the day that Mandela was released, were you there? Were
Yes.
you in Paarl? How did you experience that day?
Let me just step a bit back. So 85, I started at UWC. I became very involved, not only in the university politics, but also in the home politics. I met my political mentor, old trade unionist. She passed away now, Liz Abrams, who a party, because you asked me, was your father one of your role models? I said there were many. So this was my second role model. Liz Abrams, she worked with Madiba and Sisulu and all of these people. So she refined my political thinking, so that you don't just be a loose cannon, but that you have to define and really it's about focus. You understand the working class struggle. You must understand that the community struggle, And the student struggle and the worker struggle it's all one. I think he taught me that. You can't separate the suffering of your parents from the suffering of the students or the suffering of the other workers. I think that almost interwovenness, and it's everything should play a role. So so I met her, and in September of 85, I was detained for the first time for my political activities. 1985, for 2 weeks. That was detention without trial. Then obviously when I came out, more resolved, because when you're in Victor Verster where Mandela was, when you are there, you meet all activists from Worcester and from Cape Town, and you actually realize there's a lot of things that are the same, but you can also learn a lot out of the struggles of Manenberg and these places. So obviously we established a lot of community-based organizations, one organization to deal with the consumer boycott, another one to deal with the youth, student movement. I was especially involved in the senior student movement and also in the teacher union movement. So I was identified to mobilize the teachers. We established the PAL Teachers Union, which later became SATU. So the South African Democratic Teachers Union, at PAL brands. So I was very much involved in structures in the UDF. And then the year after, not 86, 87, I was again detained, but for 3 months, now longer. Not 2 weeks, 3 months, also at Victor Verster. But before you go to Victor Verster, they put you in all kinds of prisons around to confuse you. They put you in all kinds of smaller prisons and police stations just to disorientate you. Then obviously I came out again, and then in 1988, again detention without trial, but for 6 months this time. In that same time, December that year, we've heard that Madiba was transferred from Poulsmoor to Victor Verster. Some of the water, we got there's lots of intelligence. Even if you keep you in jail, there's information coming through. Because at that stage we heard that on Robben Island, the Robben Island prisoners, Sisulu and them were on hunger strike. So we also went on hunger strike. And the hunger strike is for them to be released. And we've got the news that some of them are being released. So at that stage we knew that our struggle was almost over. When they started to release those old men, old comrades, yeah. And Madiba is moved to PAL. And we also knew that he was not in a jail. We knew that he was in a house, right, but under protection. I think was it in prison that they've even asked me in that prison because I was good in drawing work, to draw a birthday card for him. And I don't know where that card is now, so we also send that to him. So and also when his kids, and when he would come, the PAL comrades will house them. So he owes a lot. He was very fond of PAL. So when the time comes, okay, so 88 I was detained for 6 months. So I was released on the 13th of January, 1989. And when I came out, obviously I could see then the mood was close to, you could see these things are going to come, because the information flows. That we know that de Klerk and Mandela was talking, and the news. So we were starting to prepare for Mandela's release ever since I came out. In fact, Winnie would come, or the police will give false information, and then Winnie would come down and they say, Mandela will be released today, and she comes to us, and we mobilized the buses, and we got there, and then he's not released. For that whole 89, it was like that, until the announcement that he will be released on the 11th of February, 1990. Yeah. So when we got that news, probably a week, we had to structure ourselves. We know from communications that Madiba wanted to be released in PAL because of his indebtedness for that year, 18 months that he was there. You can even read it in his book. You will see there, he would have been, I think page 116, just look at his release. He said his wish was to be released in PAL. So we already mobilized, and we mobilized and organized the release committee, and it would be at Tal Josaphat Stadium in PAL. So we've done all the preparations, but a couple of days before that, the Trevor Manuel and the comrades from Cape Town and from Joburg said that the stadium there would not be big enough. And the ANC was not that organized yet to deal with all the risks involved in that whole list. On the other hand, we were also we didn't trust the whole release thing. Very circumspect. Is this not a trap? And there was a lot of confusion, but we knew we need to be prepared. I even knew that in that mountains around Victor Verster, low mountains, that there were MK guys employed, but they were not enough. We knew that if something horrible would have happened, we would not have been able to deal with that issue. We were very clear. So there was a lot of hope and trust in it, because I think part of it is de Klerk knew he had the upper hand. He also knew that by releasing Madiba, it's transferring the risk to the movement, to the democratic movement. But fortunately for us, it worked out well. I know there was confusion. I know the comrade also took him, what is his name? Roseberry Sonto. I know him very well. He worked in the civic structures. I knew him very well, and he transported Madiba in the wrong direction, and eventually they landed up. We were, of course, mobilizing the people that they get into the buses to go to the Grand Parade, and sure. In fact, because I was involved in this thing, was cut off from my family. My family got to the parade on their own because I was busy organizing so that people get out. Because that whole street from the prison up till where that road R45 meets the N1 was full of cars and people. And you had to get all of those people out and get them, either they go home to Paarl and the surrounding areas, or they go on the buses to the Grand Parade, yeah. But anyhow, eventually I landed up, I don't know if I took a bus or whatever, but eventually I also landed up at the Grand Parade here. And fortunately for all of us, he was delayed. So when he made the speech, it was late afternoon already, so we could still hear the speech that day, yeah.
And then, where did you go from there? You were still a lecturer.
I was still a lecturer. I was still a lecturer at UWC. In fact, in that year, or just after that, I got my master's degree. Still lecturing at UWC. But then, after obviously participating in the 1994 elections, preparing the ANC local branches to organize themselves, get the candidates in place, etc. It was very hectic because a very short time, even 1994 looks a lot of time, but a lot of things happened. Remember, they killed Chris Hani there. I only met Chris Hani once, and I personally, because this political mentor of mine was also responsible for Chris Hani's skipping out of the country. Chris Hani was staying with her. There's a move how they get themselves out of the country. So I said to her, her name is Elizabeth Abrams, Nana, I want to see Chris in your presence, because you speak so much about him and you also speak about you. And he told us the Thursday that he will come the Friday. And all that we could mobilize were the school kids. And I remember still standing with him, and he said, no, comrades, you can't get kids out of school to come. But I said, Comrade Chris, you only told us yesterday that you're coming. So there's the easy, how do we mobilize so quickly? So he was not very impressed that we had school kids during school time at the rally where he was speaking. So that's how I remember him. And then a year after that, they obviously assassinated him. Great leader. Madiba is great, but there was something different about Chris Hani. I am sure Chris Hani was sharper. There was just a sharpness, remember, Madiba was very old. I was twice at the rally where Madiba received the freedom of Paarl, whatever. I was the MC at the rally with him. And he was tired. Because an old man, and he was used to campaign. He must be here, he must be in London, so he was very tired. While Hani was very, very alert and vigilant. So when I say about influence, all of these leaders influence me. You get out of Madiba something, when you get at Chris something, you get Sisulu, you get all of them something, and I was blessed to have crossed many of their paths because of my relationship with Liz Abrams, who who were, their ages, because he was old, yeah.
So where did you go from university, from your lecturing?
Yeah, I stayed there on there till the year 2000. But before the 2000, I participated in the local government election, so I was a local councillor also in Paarl for a year in the transitional phase. Paarl Council and in the Cape Winelands Town Council. So there already you learn structure. Apart from the leadership positions in the ANC or the UDF structures, there you need now from protesting into governing. So you learn that discipline. And you learn how to read the mind of your former oppressor and to how to outsmart them at their own game. So if we know, for instance, it's going to come to a vote, and we know we're going to lose that vote, then we nominate one of them. So it totally disempowers them, because now you nominate one of them and you confuse them. Why don't you put your candidate up? You know you're going to... So those kind of tactical work in order to further your community's interests. And then in 2000, after I've been a councillor, I've been a political activist, I've been a university lecturer, I started to apply for positions. And in August 2000, I accepted senior government position in Mpumalanga as head of tourism, of their tourism, just established tourism directorate. And I stayed on for almost 4.5 years. And it was also a huge impact in my life, because then I could... What I've studied for was my studies were in geography and environmental studies, but in tourism, I could practically do that. So I know Siabuswa. When Mpumalanga is on the news, I almost know the landscape better than the Western Cape landscape. When they talk about Komati Poort, I know exactly where it is. When they talk about what is the other place? Koopmans. When they talk about all the places in Mpumalanga, I immediately know where it is, and the people, and it also taught me almost like Western Cape is a different country from there, because humility, people, the chiefs, and you learn those traditional African stuff that you only read in books, but now you are there. The king calls you to a meeting, but when you get there, his followers ask you, no, you can't. You can't just meet with the king. You must sit outside. You must state why you are here. All of those things, those protocols, and it learns you respect. It learns you patience again. And it learns you that African traditional leadership lessons are very important, because it teaches you to listen instead of to talk. In fact, I picked up a phrase that they use there in Mpumalanga province, whether it's Siswati or Ndebele. They always say, don't come and talk English here. And then I literally thought, don't speak the English language. But it's about, don't come and talk a lot and do nothing here. That's actually what it meant. Okay. Yeah, so listen, don't just speak, was the lesson when they say that. So from there, after very good stint there, very, very good support from the politicians, and in a very short space, we changed the face of the waterfalls and the Kruger National Park, working very closely with the industry in the communities there. So much so, when I left, when I said to my minister, MEC, I'm going to leave, he turned to the premier and he said to the premier, no, but we can't let this man leave no money. It's just built a momentum in the tourism industry. But of course, your home is always where your heart is. So when the destination marketing organization in the Western Cape was starting to form, I was starting to apply for positions. In fact, when I applied for those positions, they say, why didn't you apply for the CEO position? So I said, I never saw it. It's only when, I think somebody told me, at the Tourism in Daba, somebody told me that the senior executive position is also going to open, so I applied for that. So in 2004, end of 2004 then, I was offered the executive director position in the Western Cape tourism structure, and I could come back home Of course, I only probably stayed on in that position for 2 years, and then I became acting CEO, and then eventually CEO for 5 years of probably South Africa's crown jewel, which was a huge highlight in my career. Yeah.
And that was Roots Unlimited?
Yeah, it was called Cape Town Roots Unlimited, yeah.
For the whole of Western Cape?
For the entire Western Cape, yeah.
Now, tourism numbers have been going up tremendously.
Yes.
I mean, obviously in the whole country, but especially in the Western Cape.
Yes.
What would you say were the main reasons for this increase in tourism numbers in the Cape?
I deliberately skipped something very important in my, and that's the World Cup. Remember, I was instrumental in the Western Cape's marketing strategy around the World Cup. It was called Beyond the 90 Minutes, and it was saying football match is 90 minutes, but there's so much more that you can experience after that. And I think really that campaign, not at the level of programs, but at the level of in the media, in the mind of the consumer, whether you're in Hong Kong, in Tokyo, or in Kinshasa, or in Santiago, Chile, I think that positive experience around the World Cup changed the minds of the international tourism consumer around issues of crime, issues of violence, issues of bad infrastructure. I think not the Western Cape, the entire country's perception or how consumers viewed South Africa changed with that World Cup. So I think a lot of the infrastructure and the goodwill that was built up 2010, 2011, 2012 is now reflective in the numbers that we're seeing. So better infrastructure attract people. The other thing to come to the Western Cape in particular, I think the variety of offerings within a short geographic distance. Because I know when I go to France, I want to fit in the main things. So you position yourself where you can do all the main things. I think, especially for first-time consumers or visitors to South Africa, it's very important. So there's a lot of that counts in the favor of the Western Cape. Okay, Mpumalanga is beautiful, but you have to travel. Kruger's on this side, and the waterfalls is on that side. Then you go to it's far in between. So I think that, but then also I think the Western Cape has established a long relationship with the most important source market, Germany, France, the Netherlands, but even China, the East, has come to the Western Cape. So I think it's a very fortunate province that even without a lot of direct flights, it has built a brand that even sometimes it's not really delivering on that brand, that people come for that brand. So I really think that the idea of friendliness, the idea of openness, the idea of that you can get a good experience, which is not necessarily only a Western experience, because often people say the Western Cape is a European experience, an Anglo-European experience. I think it's not that only. I think it's the friendliness. It's a lot of issues that I think compel the consumer to give it a go. Yeah.
Now, Calvyn, can you tell us, from Roots you moved on to the Castle of Good Hope, which I believe is the oldest building in the Cape?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your work at the castle, your vision for the castle?
Yeah. Of course, after my contract at Cape Town Roots Unlimited, I freelanced for a year or so before this castle position came up. In fact, a recruiting agency, asked me to apply for this position. She first asked me to apply for the CASIDRA position. In Paarl, there's the CASIDRA is the Cape Rural Development Agency, and then she said this one will come open. But in that period, in that year, or I would say 9 months, we've completed a tourism study for Paarl, for the Drakenstein municipality, a youth study for the Northern Cape, a tourism feasibility study for the Cederberg area, and another review of study on the West Coast in that time. And then I applied for this position, and I started on the 15th of April 2013. Now, I didn't know what I was letting myself in, because the Castle Association with the SA National, the old apartheid army with colonialism and Van der Stel and that was a bit worrying to me. And especially when I got here, I could still see a lot of the old guards almost like moving around here. But very soon I realized that when you inherit a country, you can't pick and choose. You just want the good things. You must pick everything and use all your collective heritage and your infrastructure to the good of all people. So I was very clear. So my vision was very clear. It was to take an old symbol of oppression and apartheid and turn it into a warm, inclusive home where everybody can associate with. And that vision needs to be given legs. It's no use yet you talk about that. And so if you look at all the difference in the castle, the 4 statues of the kings, the Kratua monument here, a center of memory there, the Philips lightning outside, all of these things were not there when I was here. And they're all here now. A restitution garden in the back. So that is the physical manifestation of an inclusive home. So now suddenly Muslim people come here, Jewish people come here, they want functions here, a commercial event like this that you're seeing out here, the crowd come here. For me, it was so interesting. Last week, we had the Ramadan Expo here. 25,000 Muslim people coming in and out of the... And if they really live to their conscience, they should avoid this place. But they had the festival here.
So can we say the castle has been transformed?
It's still a journey. I think what I see now is that people of Afrikaner origin are starting on, especially on the electronic world, are starting to making comments. Like for instance, last week there was a comment, they came here, and all they could see is the smell is kusisters and curry, and they wouldn't give it a sec, even though they couldn't see the building, they wouldn't give it a second to go. The week before that, somebody say, oh, they now see the building of strength and Afrikaner freedom is now being awarded as a wedding venue. So we get that kind of comments, but then I say it means that the transformation project is working. If people with that old mentality is thinking that the castle is only for them and a bastion of Afrikanerdom, if they feel uncomfortable, it means we have moved. If the Khoi people can come in here and Langalibelele, the Mswati people can come in here, and the Muslim people and Jewish people can come in here, even if they had painful memories, if they go into the archives, they will see that they were persecuted here, Muslim people couldn't read the Quran here, and they come back, then it's that full circle. Then I'm almost at the point where I can say, I can live here, and that legacy of transforming this castle has been done, because it's now internalized. My staff are now running the things. I can stay away for a week. They know exactly what is the silent philosophy. They know as I call it, the lines are.
So, Calvyn, let's talk about leadership, your views on leadership.
Yeah.
What does the future of leadership mean to you? What do you see are the important aspects for leadership in the future?
You see, the problem with leadership, my kind of leadership, was built through my circumstances. A part of born in a big extended family, but it was the upheavals of the 70s and 80s that formed me, and we needed that particular response. Madiba, what we see from Madiba in this reconciliation was not always him, but he had to respond to reaching out to the enemy in order not to have the country destroyed. So the circumstances forced the leadership. What we need now is leadership with intense long-term views around communication, around how do you deal with this lot of information, how do you deal with artificial intelligence, how do you deal with an economy that doesn't even, you don't know what it's going to look tomorrow. So there's a lot of, it's very complex to be a leader today, because very few people realize that the internet only started in 1989. That's yesterday. Facebook was only starting in
2005. Before, yeah.
So there are now jobs that was never thought about. So leadership must now respond to that. This information era, this communication era, the era of artificial intelligence. The fact that you will not have the traditional workplace anymore. The destruction of borders between right and wrong and whatever, relativism. So it's difficult, but I think if the leaders, irrespective of the circumstances that changed, if the leaders still keep the basics, humility, humanity, caring for your followers, then they will also navigate this new era. Because I'm looking at my kids and I see leadership in all of them, but I actually pity them because it will not be easy. Us, there's an enemy, here's us. You lead to get this enemy out of the way to better. Now it is there.
Right.
Now how do you take it from there? And there's instant gratification. Kids, if they start to work, they want to be able to afford a house and a car, which is they don't have that patience that we have.
So would you agree to say that leaders are made, not born?
No, remember I said, partially, the way that I was born, and in the position that I was born, I had to lead. So I was born in reluctant. I was a very reluctant leader. I was the eldest son, and people would say, oh, he's clever, and he's going to be they always said I was going to be a principal one day. So probably people saw it, but I didn't feel it. But when the 76 and those things come, I had to be, circumstances had shaped me. Probably what was born in was then almost molded through these circumstances. So I believe there is some genetics also in leadership. Your makeup, your level-headedness, your cool, how you deal with situations, that kind of aura that because you can see, if there are 5 kids, this one signs that aura. And I can say I have 3 kids, my youngest one is that she's got that leadership qualities. So because she's born with that, she couldn't, if you are 3 years old, you could probably not see that your father is a CEO, that's why I am like this. So partially born, but also the challenges of the society, and now it's a global society, will shape the leaders. And I think that's why there are very few good leaders in this transition. I call this transition phase. Name one outstanding leader in the world today.
So would you say it's important that we look at shaping future leaders?
Yeah,
and
we need to.
What have you learned from your own journey that is important when it comes to building and shaping leaders of the future?
You must have a mentor. Obviously, my father, I lost my father. I didn't tell you that I lost my father in 1997. But what I'm saying is that you need to cling onto somebody who you think meet your brand and you must have some hero. Whether it's a physical person or a combination of other people, you need to have something that you are striving for. And for me, that I had that along the way. Always somebody that I could bounce off, even if it's not your own family. And so that's why I say this woman, Elizabeth Abrams from the Union, woman who grew up very poor, because we also grew up very poorly. I could immediately associate with her, and I learned a lot from her. So you need that. I think you need that mentoring and shaping of your leadership. It's difficult to do it, like Madeba was shaped by Sisulu. He would always refer to Sisulu as his father that's taking him in the right direction. Yeah.
So let's talk about the next generation. You have 2 kids, right?
3.
3?
Yeah.
And they
Boy
are
and 2.
Between what ages?
The one is 21, the one is 17, and the one is 12 years old.
So what would you tell them and other aspiring leaders at that age? They should really focus on to build a future-proof career, if that is possible.
I think if they remember where they come from and stick to the basics, it's still, even in this world of Twitter and Facebook, it's still good to connect at a human scale, because you can't. There's no such thing as artificial leadership. There's artificial intelligence, there's artificial communication, there's instant gratification, but somehow leadership must be real. And you live out your basic values of respect, of, say thank you, greet. I always tell them. Then they say, but I have greeted the man. I said, I didn't hear you. Those things become your pointers. They become your anchors. The others, the education and what you learn from other people is just there to refine you. So that respect, that say thank you, that read a lot, listen to older people and younger people, and take out the best of them. But then also education is very important. And sometimes it's not formal education, but education in what you can pick up from other people, what you learn, what you read, what you pick up from the media, and try to work out your own independence. Like for instance, that's why I say I can see of the three, this youngest one. She's listening to you, take it in, but still she's very firm on her views. And I think that's an important part of leadership. That you have your core leadership qualities, and the others you must get from other people.
So it has a lot to do with character.
Yeah, character is important. If I see a group of kids, I can see this one, and this one. Because it's just, there's just something. You've met me at Madiba before. You can just see, how are you? I remember you, I saw you last year. That's so, that kind of acknowledgement and picking up things and show that you care and genuine. And I think if you look at the current crop of leaders that we have worldwide, I think they've missed that. Whether it's the Putin or whether it's what is this man of America?
Trump.
Yeah, they've just missed. They missed the very basic things.
So, Calvyn, when it comes to technology, what are the technologies that you would say we need to look out for that will be guiding, maybe driving the future of leadership?
I think it's obviously artificial intelligence, no? How robotics are employed, and I mean it's a lot. You can already see in your cars, your car can reverse on its own. I think that is going to be a major thing. Then also I think the different space technologies. I mean, think there's a huge move towards that the Earth is not the final frontier. That probably we're going to break out through the frontier through research breakthroughs of earthly things. Somehow, I think in energy and in communications, this research that's going to do on Earth is going to connect us to the universe. I think that's probably the direction that we are going, and that leaders must. And we have them, and we have the people. We have Elon Musk, he's South African, and we have Branson, who's also quasi South African. Because I remember when I was in Mpumalanga, he used to be in Nelspruit all the time because he's got a small plot there. So that's the direction probably. Those are the kind of leaders. I don't think there are political leaders that excite the youth now. It's the technology and those leaders that's probably worth following. And both of them are very humble. If you look at, they communicate, they are born leaders, and they are also taking hold of what the technological world is offering. Yeah.
So, Calvyn, looking back at your leadership journey, is there maybe a success story that you can share with us? Is there maybe somebody that you mentored that really learned, took a leaf from your book of leadership, that you would say, yeah, that is a highlight that I would like to remember, or maybe even be remembered for?
Oh, so many. When I got into Mpumalanga, the tourism directorate, I met a very young student, Mpo Pebani. His mother was homeless. His father was a domestic, worked in the clean. It was really poor. He was from Bushbuck-Ridge, and Bushbuck-Ridge was in turmoil. It was those first border when people wanted not to be in Limpopo, they wanted to be here. They want to be in Mpumalanga. And he would come there because the university, the college is in Nelspruit. He would come there, and eventually I took him under my wing. I took him informally as an intern in my office. I exposed him to meeting with the MEC, meeting with the Premier, and he, in a very short space of time, I could see how, without telling him, do this, he's just almost looking at me as an example. I would take him to media briefings, and today, and then obviously I left there, and then when I contacted him again, he got a lecturer post at the university. Then he applied for a position here in Cape Nature, and he got a tourism manager position here and then he connected to me again. He connected with me again, because he worked for Cape Nature, I worked for Cape Town Tourism Limited. And then he got but he came a lot to me, and he asked me he just wanted to be he doesn't ask anything, he just wanted to be in my sphere. And then he is now, I think, a senior manager in tourism in the Eastern Cape. If you talk about poor, like that, you could see that he doesn't even have taxi fare to go back home to be very, very. And I think that's, in fact, I didn't think that I had such a big influence on his life, that he reminding me every time what I've actually changed his life. So I think in that sense, I'm very proud of that. The other one was here, when I got back here, a young man. He was actually, I can't mention his name because he's a friend of mine who divorced from his wife's eldest son. He tried to commit suicide. They pushed him too hard. They wanted to force him to go into a study direction. He failed. He was young. He was 17, very young for university. And then, I don't know, but I could feel that he felt the pressure. You could still see today the things in his name. So I also took him then I realized, maybe, this is a important Pabani. Took him into my office. He would come and he would sit to me and he would say, Uncle Calvyn, so thankful for this. My life was in a mess, but next year I'm going to study again. But I want to study something I want to be like you. I want to be in tourism or international relations, because I see you on TV, you travel overseas. I also want to be that. I said, no, you will. So the next year, and he became part of the CTRU family. So he would mix with other people. I think he grew in his confidence. He stayed about 6 months, 7 months, and then he applied for university, Stellenbosch, accepted. We also organized a bursary for him. What he also had is got this, what do you call it? Yes. Okay. So he was very insecure also. And last year, he finished his master's cum laude in international relationships. And he travels the world now. He is a Smile Foundation ambassador.
Okay, fantastic.
If we didn't connect at that moment, I wouldn't know what would have happened to this boy. Because he would often just come into me, because obviously he can't be in my office all the time. But sometimes he want to come. Now, why are the other managers not like Uncle Calvyn? They're sloppy, they don't know what they do, whatever. He would come. So I didn't realize that they also pick up bad leadership qualities around me, and he could distinguish what is good leadership. So it's not often necessary to deliberately say you're mentoring somebody. Just be that person in your ambience and your influence. It's leading by influence, not by
example.
Yeah, by example, not by a deliberate plan. Now I'm going to learn you how to write, now I'm going to do you that. It's through example, it's through practical. But that is probably why you ask me, who is your mentor? Is because when you build, you must see. They can't teach you with words how to build bricks. You must do it. You must see and do it. Maybe I've got my mentoring and leadership transfer skills from the builder experience, from that year.
So what you say, as an aspiring leader, you have to consider that other people look to you, look up to you, look at you as a role model.
Of course.
And you have to live
You
up
love
to
to,
that
you
expectation.
always, because this boy reminded me, by pointing out the flaws in my other executive managers, without saying to me, he's recognizing that I'm leading without those faults in me. That's what he basically meant, without telling it to me. But he's pointing out, this one is coming late to work, this one is doing this, the one with so that means the absence of that in me is it's a positive thing that he's taking in.
So this is really important. What would you recommend to aspiring leaders who are searching for a mentor? What should they do? How should they go about finding a mentor and maybe attaching themselves to a mentor and a role model?
Yeah, I think it's difficult, né? Because what you need to be a leader, you won't find in one mentor. So it's better to find somebody who you could relate to at a personal level, you have the same interest, etc., and work it from there. Because you will not get all the leadership qualities, because you know that leadership is consisting of many image, influence, brand, all of those things. So they won't find any, but one that closely resonates with their worldview, their values, etc., and work from there. So that you have one base from which you work. You can always ask that mentor, or you can look for others to support that. But you have to have one person in your mind. You need to say, what would Calvin say if a guy comes with a knife and wants to take your cell phone? You want to say, what will Calvin say if a woman with, very, very seductively come to you and you're alone, whatever? You must have that. And that was Les Abrams. I always say, what would she have said if I'm in this situation? You don't know it. It's subconsciously. And you can only subconsciously do that if you really connect with a mentor. You can't be given a mentor. You must find the mentor, and you must find each other. The mentor must find you, and you must find the mentor. That's my experience. I don't say that's correct, but I'm saying that's how I because in the tourism environment, you talk about the mentorship program, and then you match this one with this one, and very few of those things work, because they must come through exploration and naturally that you connect with somebody. It's almost like a marriage. You find your life partner. Yeah.
It's almost organic.
Yes, it must grow organically. Yeah.
Okay. So, Calvyn, well, before we conclude, where can our listeners connect with you? Where can they follow your thought leadership, maybe on social media, and where should they connect with you? I'm not on Facebook for various reasons, but I am on LinkedIn. There's a LinkedIn profile that they can go in. And I'm on WhatsApp. Those are the two social media things that I have. So if they have my phone number, we can send messages on that. And then also from where I am now at the castle, I would encourage people to connect with me at my email address, ceo@castleofgoodhope.co.za, because I like those exchanges. Because this short messaging on Twitter and Facebook, I don't think that's communication. Right.
Or I haven't made up my mind whether that is actually meaningful communication. I think for some people it's important, but I have an account for both, but I don't use them. I still believe, pick up my phone, connect, because there's so many misunderstandings. Even in the emails, people create misunderstandings. Now, what more about 122, what is it, 142? Characters, you can't meaningfully communicate. You will be misunderstood. And many of the people who connect with me about transformation, English would be their second and the third language. So you actually don't want that. Because these are sensitive issues. Heritage, history, culture, ethnicity, identity are sensitive issues. And 2 or 3 wrong words can mess it up. Yeah.
Absolutely. So LinkedIn is best, or email, which is ceo@castleofgoodhope.co.za.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, finally, last but not least, is there one thing you would really like your listeners to take away from this interview and look at and implement in their own leadership?
For me, and I think I've said it before, be true to yourself. We live in an era of instant gratification, of quick fixes, of artificial, everything is artificial, everything is quick. But if you just go back to the very basic human values and just go back to humanity and connect at that level, almost like spiritually, then I think you're on the right path. The other things are only tools to reinforce that, but just be true to yourself. I remember one time people were, when I was at the CTRU, your interviews, you need to go for intonation because you speak with an Afrikaans accent. I said, no, then it's not me speaking. Then I don't speaking from my heart and from my lips, because there's a connection between your mind, your heart, your lip. That is an integrated thing. If you change one, you change the whole communication connection. So I just refuse to do that, and I've been true to myself, and I must accept that.
Thank you. Thank you,
Pleasure,
Calvyn.
pleasure, Chief.
I followed your leadership now for, I think, about 10 years.
You, a decade?
A decade?
Oh, that's my great.
Well,
I was black when you started.
I think so.
And now it's grey.
Well, but your wisdom has grown, and I must say, your authentic leadership. You
Thank
truly
you.
are an authentic leader. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor.
And I'm sure the listeners will learn a lot from your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eberl.